Council saw Earth as a curiosity, a primitive civilization that somehow managed to survive despite lacking faster-than-light travel, advanced weaponry, or any meaningful contribution to galactic society. They were wrong about everything. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had been watching, learning, and preparing. Hidden beneath Earth's deepest ocean trenches, buried within hollowed-out asteroids, and concealed in the shadows of gas-giant moons, humanity had been building something unprecedented. Not just ships or weapons, but an entire shadow fleet that defied every known law of physics and engineering. The Terran Genesis wasn't just humanity's first supercarrier, it was their declaration that the age of being underestimated was over. When it finally emerged from the depths of the Pacific Ocean, rising like a metal continent from the waves, it didn't just silence the galaxy's communications networks, it rewrote the very foundations of what every species thought possible. This is the story of how a species written off as primitive reminded the galaxy why predators should never be caged for too long. Because when humanity finally revealed what they had been hiding, the entire balance of galactic power shifted in a single devastating moment. Ambassador Zektar of the Hegemony felt the familiar weight of boredom settle over his scaled shoulders as his diplomatic vessel approached the third planet of the Sol system, Earth. The primitive world that had somehow caught the Galactic Council's attention despite contributing absolutely nothing to galactic civilization. His mission was simple: deliver the standard compliance notice, collect the yearly tribute of biological specimens, and return to civilized space before his reputation suffered from extended contact with such a backward species. The blue and green marble hung before them like a jewel, beautiful in its simplicity but utterly unremarkable in every other way. Zektar had visited hundreds of similar worlds throughout his career as a senior diplomat of the Hegemony, and they all followed the same predictable pattern. The species would grovel, offer whatever pathetic resources they possessed, and beg for protection from the more aggressive galactic powers. In return, the hegemony would provide them with basic technologies and a guarantee of safety, keeping them as useful pets in the greater galactic ecosystem. Humans had been particularly entertaining in this regard. 300 years ago, when the hegemony had first made contact with Earth, the humans had actually attempted to negotiate. They had demanded technological exchanges, territorial agreements, and even representation in the Galactic Council. The arrogance had been almost charming in its naivety. Of course, a few demonstrations of hegemony firepower had quickly corrected their misconceptions about their place in the universe. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth's governing body," reported Communications Officer Velthok, her 4 eyes focused on the holographic displays surrounding her station. "Standard diplomatic frequencies, requesting permission to board for the tribute ceremony." Zektar nodded absently, already mentally composing his report for the Council. Another routine collection from another primitive world. His thoughts were interrupted when his sensor operator, a young Kytherian named Joss, suddenly straightened in his chair with alarm. "Ambassador, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's oceans," Joss announced, his voice carrying an edge of confusion. "Multiple massive signatures, but they're moving." Moving? Zektar turned his attention to the sensor displays, expecting to see some primitive submarine activity. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The energy signatures weren't just moving, they were rising. Dozens of them spread across Earth's oceans, each one massive enough to rival a hegemony battlecruiser. As Zektar watched in growing alarm, the readings began to resolve into distinct shapes on the holographic display. "Sir," Veltek's voice had lost all trace of its earlier professionalism. "I'm reading structural integrity fields, quantum shields, and Ambassador. Those energy signatures are consistent with military-grade fusion reactors. Each one is outputting enough power to run a Class A space station." The first breach came in the Pacific Ocean. The water didn't simply part. It was displaced with such force that the resulting waves could be seen from orbit. What emerged from the depths defied every assumption Zektar had held about human capabilities. The vessel that rose from the ocean wasn't just large, it was a floating city of metal and energy, its hull stretching for kilometers in every direction. The Terran Genesis broke the surface like a mechanical leviathan awakening from centuries of slumber. Its hull was a masterwork of engineering that should have been impossible for a species that had only recently mastered basic spaceflight. Quantum armor plating gleamed under Earth's sun, while energy shields shimmered around weapon emplacements that bristled from every surface. Launch bays yawned open along its sides, each one large enough to accommodate ships the size of Zektar's diplomatic vessel. "Ambassador," Joss whispered, his voice barely audible above the hum of their ship's systems. "The whole composition, it's not showing up on any of our databases. Whatever they built that thing out of, it's not just unknown, it's theoretically impossible according to our understanding of material science." But the Genesis was only the beginning. Across Earth's oceans, more shapes began to emerge. In the Atlantic, a second supercarrier breached the surface, this one bearing obvious weapons modifications that made even the Genesis look restrained. The Indian Ocean revealed a third vessel, its design more angular and aggressive, with what appeared to be experimental technology integrated into its very structure. The Arctic Ocean yielded a fourth carrier, its hull black as space itself and emanating energy signatures that made their sensors scream warnings about contained antimatter reactions. "How many of these things do they have?" Velfak asked, her voice hollow with shock. The question was answered as their long-range sensors began detecting movement beyond Earth itself. In the asteroid belt, massive structures that had been dismissed as natural formations were beginning to move under their own power. Hidden bases on the moons of Jupiter were powering up systems that had remained dormant for centuries. Even Mars, which their surveys had classified as a dead world, was revealing underground installations that extended for hundreds of kilometers beneath its surface. "Ambassador," Joss reported, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting over 200 major vessels in this system alone, and that's just what's actively broadcasting. Our sensors are being jammed by some kind of stealth technology that we can't even begin to analyze." Zektar felt his world tilting on its axis. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had maintained contact with Earth under the assumption that humanity was a primitive species capable of little more than basic agriculture and crude manufacturing. They had demanded tribute not because Earth posed any threat, but because it was simply expected of primitive worlds to acknowledge their place in the galactic hierarchy. Now, watching the display of technological superiority unfolding before him, Zektar realized that humanity had been playing a very different game entirely. The communication channel crackled to life, and a human voice spoke with calm authority that sent chills down Zektar's spine. "Hegemony Diplomatic Vessel Eternal Harmony. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are currently in violation of Earth's territorial sovereignty. Please state your business in our space." Our space. The casual assumption of ownership in those words carried implications that Zektar's mind struggled to process. For centuries, humanity had accepted hegemony oversight without question. They had paid tribute, followed regulations, and maintained the fiction that Earth was just another primitive world under galactic protection. "This is Ambassador Zektar of the Galactic Hegemony," he replied, attempting to maintain diplomatic protocol even as his understanding of the situation crumbled around him. "I am here on official council business to collect this year's tribute as mandated by the Galactic Accords." The silence that followed stretched for long seconds before Admiral Chen responded, and when she did, there was something in her voice that sounded almost like amusement. "Ambassador, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The Galactic Accords were signed 300 years ago between the hegemony and what you believe to be the government of Earth. What you actually negotiated with was a carefully constructed diplomatic front designed to maintain the illusion that humanity was exactly what you expected us to be." The implications hit Zektar like a physical blow. "You're saying the human government we've been dealing with is real, but it represents perhaps 1% of Earth's actual population and capabilities," Chen confirmed. "The rest of us have been somewhat busy with other projects that are now reaching completion." On the display screens, the Terran Genesis had fully emerged from the Pacific. Its true size was now apparent, dwarfing even the largest hegemony vessels. Escort ships began launching from its bays, sleek fighters that moved with impossible grace and speed, their energy signatures indicating propulsion systems that violated several basic laws of physics. "I don't understand," Zektar managed. "Your technology, your ships, how is this possible? Our surveys showed that humanity had barely achieved basic space travel." "Your surveys showed exactly what we wanted them to show," Chen replied. "For 3 centuries, we've maintained a careful facade while our real civilization developed in secret. Every piece of technology we've accepted from the hegemony has been reverse-engineered and improved upon. Every diplomatic exchange has been an opportunity to learn more about galactic civilization. Every tribute payment has been a small price to pay for the information it provided about our potential enemies." Enemies. The word hung in the space between the ships like a weapon waiting to be drawn. "You've been studying us," Zektar said, the full scope of the deception finally becoming clear. "All this time you've been preparing for war." "Not war, Ambassador," Chen corrected, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been sadness. "We've been preparing for the inevitable. Humanity learned long ago that in a universe full of predators, the only way to survive is to become the apex predator yourself. We've been preparing for the day when the galaxy would finally see us as we truly are." The sensor readings continued to climb as more human vessels revealed themselves throughout the Sol system. Each new contact represented technology that shouldn't exist, capabilities that defied galactic understanding, and implications that threatened to overturn 3,000 years of established galactic order. "What do you want?" Zektar asked, his diplomat's training finally reasserting itself despite the chaos in his mind. "For now, we want you to carry a message back to the Galactic Council," Chen replied. "Tell them that Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Accords effective immediately. Tell them that humanity claims exclusive sovereignty over the Sol system and will enforce that sovereignty against any intrusion. And tell them that the age of underestimating the human species is over." The Terran Genesis was now completely free of the ocean, its massive bulk floating in Earth's atmosphere through means that Zektar couldn't begin to understand. Energy readings from its hull suggested the presence of technology that was decades ahead of anything in the hegemony's arsenal. "And if the Council refuses to recognize your claims?" Zektar asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Then the Council will learn what happens when you try to cage a species that was born to hunt," Chen replied. "Your escort out of our space is launching now. I suggest you don't keep them waiting." On the tactical display, 6 sleek vessels had detached from the Genesis and were moving to intercept the Eternal Harmony. Their approach was casual, almost lazy, but the energy readings from their weapon systems made it clear that this was not a request. As Zektar's ship was guided out of the Sol system by their impossibly advanced escorts, he found himself staring back at Earth through the observation ports. The planet looked the same as it always had, a blue and green marble hanging in space. But now he knew that beneath those placid oceans and quiet continents lay the industrial and military might of a species that had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity had just fired the opening shot in a war that no one had seen coming. As the Eternal Harmony jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization, Earth's hidden fleet began to move with purpose that had been 3 centuries in the making. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never fallen so completely silent. In the 3,000 years since the formation of the galactic government, debates had raged, wars had been declared, and entire species had been granted or denied membership, but never had a simple diplomatic report created such stunned quiet among the representatives of 47 civilizations. Chancellor Mordak of the hegemony stood at the center of the circular amphitheater, his usually confident bearing shaken as he read from Ambassador Zektar's report. The holographic display surrounding the chamber showed images captured from the Eternal Harmony sensors, images that defied explanation and challenged every assumption the Council had operated under for centuries. The vessel, designated as Terran Genesis, measures approximately 15 kilometers in length and 7 kilometers in width, Mordak continued, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Hull composition unknown. Propulsion system appears to operate on principles not found in any galactic database. Energy output exceeds that of a Hegemony Class 7 battle station. Counselor Thys of the Reptilian Dominion was the first to break the silence, her forked tongue flicking out nervously as she spoke. This must be some kind of elaborate deception. No species develops this level of technology without galactic oversight. It's impossible. I thought so too, Mordock replied grimly, until our deep space monitors confirmed similar vessels emerging throughout the Sol system. Our current count stands at over 300 major warships with construction facilities that appear to have been operating undetected for centuries. The implication sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. Counselor Vexana of the Silicon Collective's crystalline form shimmered with agitation as she processed the data. If these readings are accurate, the humans possess the single largest military force in known space. How did our intelligence networks miss an industrial complex of this magnitude? The question hung in the air like an accusation. For 3 centuries, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had maintained surveillance of primitive species through a network of sensors, spies, and regular diplomatic missions. The idea that an entire shadow civilization could develop under their noses was more than embarrassing. Admiral Corvin of the Hegemony Fleet stepped forward, his scarred features grim with professional concern. Chancellor, with your permission, I'd like to address the military implications of this development. Mordock nodded, grateful to shift discussion to practical matters rather than dwelling on their intelligence failures. Based on the energy signatures recorded by Ambassador Zektar's vessel, each human supercarrier appears to be equipped with weapon systems that exceed our current defensive capabilities. Curvin began, his words sending a chill through the chamber. More concerning is their apparent mastery of technologies we believe to be theoretical impossibilities. He gestured to the holographic displays, where detailed scans of the Terran Genesis rotated slowly. The whole material appears to incorporate quantum phase elements that should be unstable outside of laboratory conditions. Their energy shields operate on frequency patterns that our own weapons aren't designed to penetrate. And their fighter craft demonstrate maneuverability that suggests they've solved the artificial gravity problem in ways we haven't even attempted. Counselor Jitar of the Aquatic Federation bubbled nervously, his translation device struggling with his agitated speech patterns. You're saying they're more advanced than us? A species that couldn't even leave their home system 300 years ago? I'm saying they've had 300 years to study our technology while developing their own in secret. Corvin replied bluntly. Every piece of equipment we've shared with them, every technological demonstration they've witnessed, every diplomatic exchange has been an opportunity for them to learn our capabilities and limitations. Meanwhile, we know nothing about theirs. The realization struck the chamber like a physical blow. The standard practice of sharing basic technologies with primitive species was designed to bring them slowly into galactic civilization while maintaining the advanced species' technological superiority. The humans had turned that system against them, using it as a form of industrial espionage on a galactic scale. What do we know about their actual capabilities? Asked Counselor Prime Binary of the Machine Consciousness, her electronic voice cutting through the growing murmur of concerned conversations. Corvin consulted his datapad, though his expression suggested the information was far from reassuring. According to our analysis, they possess faster-than-light communication technology that operates without relay networks. Their sensor systems appear capable of penetrating our stealth technology, and their manufacturing capacity suggests they can construct vessels of this size in a matter of months rather than years. Months? This hissed in disbelief. Our most advanced shipyards require 3 years to construct a heavy cruiser. Their methods are unknown to us, Corvin admitted, but the evidence suggests they've revolutionized shipbuilding on a scale we haven't seen since the dawn of galactic civilization. Chancellor Mordock raised his hand for silence as the debate threatened to spiral out of control. The question before us now is how we respond to their declaration of independence from the Galactic Accords. They've made it clear they no longer recognize our authority over Earth or the Sol system. It's unthinkable, declared Counselor Velmorth of the Trade Consortium. No species can simply withdraw from galactic civilization. The economic implications alone would destabilize half the trade routes in this sector.
The military implications are more pressing, Corvin interjected.
If we allow one species to successfully challenge the Council's authority, others may follow. The entire foundation of galactic order depends on the principle that membership in galactic civilization is permanent. Counselor Prime Binary's optical sensors focused on the displayed images of human vessels. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that our traditional approaches may not be applicable in this situation. The humans have demonstrated technological capabilities that suggest they may be operating under completely different strategic parameters.
You're suggesting we negotiate with them? Mordak asked, his tone carefully neutral.
I'm suggesting we consider whether we have any choice, Prime Binary replied. An analysis of their revealed capabilities indicates that a military response might not produce the outcome we desire. The chamber erupted in argument at the suggestion. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through a careful balance of diplomacy and overwhelming force. The idea that they might encounter a species capable of successfully resisting their authority challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which their civilization was built. Admiral Corvin waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. There is another consideration. Our intelligence suggests that what we've seen so far may only be a fraction of their actual capabilities. The silence that followed was deafening.
What do you mean?
Mordak asked quietly. The vessels that revealed themselves in the Sol system appear to be newly constructed, Corvin explained. But our deep space sensors are detecting movement in systems that should be uninhabited. Asteroid mining operations in sectors we classified as empty space, energy signatures consistent with major industrial installations in regions we believe to contain only dead worlds. The implications were staggering. If humanity had been expanding beyond Earth while maintaining the fiction of being confined to a single world, then everything the Council thought they knew about galactic geography and resource distribution was wrong.
How far have they spread? This demanded.
We don't know, Corvin admitted. Our surveillance networks were designed to monitor known civilizations and obvious expansion patterns. If the humans had been using stealth technology and careful camouflage, they could have established a presence throughout this entire sector of the galaxy without our knowledge. Counselor Jitar's translation device sparked with agitation as he processed this information. Are you telling us that there might be human colonies and military installations throughout our own territory? I'm telling you that we need to fundamentally reassess our understanding of human capabilities and intentions, Corvin replied. What we're dealing with isn't a simple case of a primitive species getting above themselves. This is a coordinated revelation by a civilization that may have been planning this moment for centuries. Chancellor Mordak felt the weight of galactic leadership settling heavily on his shoulders. The Council had faced rebellions before, but always from species whose capabilities they understood. This was different. This was a chess match where the opponent had been playing by different rules while concealing their pieces. What are our options? He asked. Limited, Corvin replied grimly. We can attempt military action against the Sol system, but given their demonstrated capabilities, success is far from certain. We can try to contain their expansion, but we don't know how far they've already spread. Or we can attempt diplomatic resolution.
Diplomacy, Counselor Velmorth scoffed.
They've already rejected our authority. They've rejected the Galactic Accords, Prime Binary corrected. That doesn't necessarily mean they're hostile to all forms of diplomatic contact. Their message specifically requested that we recognize their sovereignty over the Sol system. It's possible they're open to negotiations as equals rather than as subjects. The concept of negotiating with a formerly primitive species as equals was almost too radical for most council members to contemplate. The entire structure of galactic civilization was built on hierarchies determined by technological advancement and historical precedent. To acknowledge humanity as an equal power would require admitting that those hierarchies weren't as stable as they had believed. There's another possibility we haven't discussed, said Counselor Thys quietly. What if they're not interested in negotiation at all? What if this revelation is preparation for expansion by force?
The question sent a chill through the chamber. Every member of the council represented a civilization that had reached its current position through a combination of technological advancement, diplomatic maneuvering, and, when necessary, military conquest. If humanity had secretly achieved technological superiority, there was nothing to prevent them from following the same historical pattern. Their message didn't contain any territorial demands beyond the Sol system, Mordak pointed out, though his tone suggested he found this less reassuring than it should have been. Yet, this replied, expansion plans are rarely announced in advance. Admiral Corvin cleared his throat to regain the chamber's attention.
If I may, Chancellor, I believe our immediate priority should be intelligence gathering.
We need to understand the full scope of human capabilities before we can make informed decisions about how to respond. What do you recommend? Dispatch our most advanced surveillance vessels to conduct long-range reconnaissance of human activities throughout this sector. Activate our deep space sensor networks to search for previously undetected installations. And most importantly, attempt to establish secure communications with our intelligence assets in human space. Do we have assets in human space? Council Vexana asked. Corrivan's expression darkened. We did. We've lost contact with all of them in the past 24 hours. Either their agents had been discovered and neutralized, or they had chosen to side with humanity over the Council. Neither possibility was reassuring. Chancellor Mordak stood silent for a long moment, weighing options that all seemed to lead to unacceptable outcomes. Finally, he spoke with the authority of his office, though his voice carried the strain of leading in unprecedented circumstances. Admiral Corvin, you have authorization to begin immediate reconnaissance operations. Use whatever resources are necessary to determine the full extent of human capabilities and territorial claims. Counselor Prime Binary, prepare a diplomatic contingency plan in case military options prove unfeasible. And all council members will place their home fleets on high alert until we better understand what we're dealing with. As the session dissolved into smaller groups of urgent conversation, Mordak found himself staring at the holographic image of the Terran Genesis. The massive vessel hung in space like a promise of changes to come, its alien hull gleaming with technologies that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. 300 years ago, the Galactic Council had welcomed humanity into galactic civilization as junior partners. Now it appeared that humanity was ready to redefine what galactic civilization meant. The only question was whether the rest of the galaxy would have any choice in the matter. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Research Station Prometheus, hidden deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, watching as 3 centuries of careful planning finally came to fruition. The massive holographic display before her showed the positions of human assets throughout the galaxy, each point of light representing a carefully concealed outpost, mining facility, or observation post that had been operating in secret while the galaxy believed humanity was confined to Earth. Status report, she called out to her team of coordinators, each one managing communications with a different sector of humanity's hidden network. Kepler Station is fully operational, reported Commander Zhang from his console. All stealth systems are functioning normally, and the Hegemony patrol that passed through the system last week didn't detect anything unusual. Titan Base confirms successful activation of the quantum communication array, added Dr. B. Okafor, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. We now have real-time coordination with all assets within a 50 light-year radius. Elena nodded with satisfaction. The quantum communication network had been humanity's greatest breakthrough, allowing instantaneous coordination across interstellar distances without relying on the galactic relay systems that could be monitored by the Council. It was this technology that had made their vast deception possible. What's our status on the industrial facilities? She asked. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her station where streams of data flowed across multiple displays. Ceres Manufacturing Complex has completed production of the 7th Genesis-class Supercarrier. The facility is now beginning construction of the experimental Olympus-class Dreadnought. Estimated completion time is 14 months. The numbers were staggering even to Elena, who had helped design the network. Humanity hadn't just been building ships in secret, they had been constructing an entire parallel civilization that spanned dozens of star systems. Every dead world, empty asteroid field, and uninhabited system that the galaxy had written off as useless had become a potential site for human expansion. Dr. Vasquez, interrupted Lieutenant Torres from the intelligence station. We're receiving priority transmissions from our deep space observers. Hegemony reconnaissance fleets are moving toward several of our outer perimeter installations. Elena frowned, studying the tactical display as red markers appeared to show the movement of enemy vessels. The Council's response had been faster than anticipated, but not entirely unexpected. Are they conducting random sweeps, or do they have specific intelligence? It appears to be systematic grid searches, Torres replied, analyzing the movement patterns. They're focusing on systems that show any anomalous energy readings or unusual asteroid formations. They're being thorough, but not thorough enough, Elena murmured with a slight smile. Activate Protocol 7 for all installations in those sectors. Full stealth mode and minimal power signatures. Let's see how good their sensors really are when we're trying to hide. The order rippled through the quantum communication network, reaching human installations across light years of space in an instant. Throughout the galaxy, carefully disguised facilities began implementing concealment procedures that had been refined over centuries of avoiding detection. Dr. APC Vasquez, called out Dr. Okafor, we're getting reports from the Sol system. Admiral Chen wants to know if we're ready for Phase 2 of the revelation. Elena paused, considering the implications. Phase 2 would reveal not just humanity's military capabilities, but the true scope of their expansion. It would show the galaxy that humans weren't just on Earth, they were everywhere, operating a shadow civilization that had been studying and preparing for this moment since first contact. Tell the Admiral that all outer perimeter installations are secure and ready for exposure. But recommend we wait for the Council to commit more forces to their reconnaissance operations before we show them how futile those operations really are. The beauty of humanity's strategy lay not just in its scope, but in its patience. 300 years of careful expansion had been conducted under a simple principle: never reveal more than absolutely necessary and always let your opponents make the first mistake. The Council's decision to send reconnaissance fleets to search for human installations was exactly the kind of mistake they had been waiting for. Ma'am, reported Commander Zhang, we're receiving data from Observer Station Delta. They're tracking a Hegemony deep space cruiser approaching the Kepler system. The vessel is equipped with enhanced sensor arrays and appears to be conducting detailed scans of every planetary body in the system. How close will they get to Kepler Station? Elena asked. Current trajectory puts them within 50,000 kilometers of the station's position, Zhang replied, close enough for their sensors to detect us if we're operating under normal parameters. Elena smiled coldly. Then let's not operate under normal parameters. Signal Kepler Station to activate the gravitational masking array. Let's see if the Hegemony has figured out how to detect a facility that's technically not there. The gravitational masking technology was one of humanity's proudest achievements. A system that used controlled gravitational fields to bend space around an installation, making it effectively invisible to most forms of detection. It was the kind of breakthrough that the galaxy's most advanced scientists believed to be impossible, which made it perfect for humanity's purposes. Kepler Station confirms activation of masking array, Zhang reported. The Hegemony vessel is beginning its detailed scan now. On the holographic display, Elena watched as the enemy cruiser passed directly through the space where Kepler Station was located, its sensors detecting nothing but empty void. The station's 6,000 inhabitants and massive industrial complex remained completely hidden, operating normally while an enemy vessel searched for them from a distance measured in meters rather than kilometers. Scan complete, Zhang announced. The Hegemony vessel is moving on to the next system. No indication that they detected anything unusual. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The technological gap between humanity and the galactic powers was even larger than most humans realized. While the Council had spent centuries refining technologies they already understood, humanity had been forced to innovate, developing entirely new approaches to problems the galaxy considered solved. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Pasquez, Kim called out, "We're receiving reports from the manufacturing facilities. The Ceres complex wants to know if they should accelerate production schedules in preparation for potential conflict." "Negative," Elena replied after a moment's consideration. "Maintain current production rates but prepare for emergency protocols. If the Council decides to escalate beyond reconnaissance, we want to be ready to reveal capabilities they can't possibly prepare for." Hidden throughout the galaxy, automated manufacturing facilities had been producing ships, weapons, and equipment at rates that would be considered impossible by galactic standards. The secret wasn't just advanced automation, it was a complete rethinking of how industrial production should work. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from the Tau Ceti facility," Dr. Okafor announced. "They're detecting increased hegemony patrol activity in nearby systems. Admiral Morrison is requesting permission to begin active sensor jamming if any hostile vessels approach too closely." Elena shook her head. "Tell Admiral Morrison to maintain passive posture until directly threatened. We want the Council to find just enough evidence to convince themselves they understand the scope of our capabilities while remaining completely wrong about everything that actually matters." The psychological warfare aspect of their strategy was just as important as the technological superiority. Every time a hegemony reconnaissance vessel detected what appeared to be a human installation, they would report back information that was carefully designed to mislead. The Council would see evidence of human expansion, but they would consistently underestimate its true scope and sophistication. Dr. Vasquez, Lieutenant Torres interrupted. "Priority communication from Earth. Admiral Chen is requesting immediate consultation on a developing situation." Elena activated the secure channel, and Admiral Chen's image appeared on the holographic display. The Admiral looked tired but determined, the weight of commanding humanity's most visible military assets evident in her expression. "Elena, we have a problem," Chen began without preamble. "Our intelligence sources within the Council are reporting that they're considering military action against the Sol system. Admiral Corvin is advocating for a demonstration of force to test our defenses." "How long do we have?" Elena asked. 48 hours, maybe less. They're mobilizing a fleet that includes their most advanced vessels. If they decide to probe our defenses, it's going to be with enough firepower to level a small planet." Elena felt a chill of anticipation rather than fear. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The point where humanity would have to reveal not just that they possessed advanced military capabilities, but that they had transcended the limitations that defined galactic warfare itself. "Admiral, are you ready to show them what a real supercarrier can do?" Elena asked. Chen's expression hardened with resolve. "The Genesis and her sister ships have been waiting for this moment for 3 centuries. We're ready to redefine what naval warfare means in this galaxy. Then coordinate with the outer perimeter installations. If the Council wants to see our defenses, let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget." "But, Elena," Chen's voice took on a warning tone, "once we reveal our true capabilities, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what humanity has become." "The galaxy needs to know," Elena replied firmly. 300 years of hiding has served its purpose, but the time for deception is ending. If the Council wants to test our resolve, they're going to learn that humanity doesn't just have hidden supercarriers. We become something the galaxy has never seen before. As the communication channel closed, Elena turned back to her team of coordinators. Throughout the galaxy, human installations were reporting ready status. Ships that had remained hidden for decades were powering up their systems. Industrial facilities were shifting into wartime production modes. And in the Sol system, the supercarriers that had announced humanity's emergence were preparing to demonstrate capabilities that would reshape galactic civilization forever. "All stations, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez," she announced over the quantum communication network. "Initiate Revelation Protocol. It's time to show the galaxy what 3 centuries of human ingenuity can accomplish when we're not pretending to be primitive anymore." The response came back from dozens of star systems simultaneously, thousands of voices speaking as one understood. Humanity stands ready. As Elena watched the tactical displays updating with the positions of human assets throughout the galaxy, she felt a profound sense of anticipation. The Council believed they were dealing with a single rebellious species confined to one star system. They were about to discover that humanity had become something far more dangerous, a civilization that had mastered the art of hiding in plain sight while building an empire that spanned the stars. The hidden Supercarrier had been just the beginning. What came next would change everything. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of the hegemony flagship Sovereign's Wrath, watching the tactical displays as his fleet assembled for what he hoped would be a simple demonstration of galactic authority. Around him, the most advanced vessels in the hegemony navy moved into formation. 50 ships representing the pinnacle of 3,000 years of military evolution, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire worlds. "All vessels report ready for combat operations," replied Captain Belnash, his aide-de-camp. "The heavy cruisers Retribution and Dominance have established screening positions. The carrier group is maintaining position at maximum sensor range. All systems are operating within normal parameters." Corvin nodded, studying the holographic display that showed their approach to the Sol system. Intelligence reports suggested that humanity possessed perhaps a dozen advanced vessels, impressive for a supposedly primitive species but hardly a match for the assembled might of the hegemony's finest ships. This operation was intended to be a measured response, enough force to demonstrate Council authority while avoiding unnecessary destruction. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator, "we're detecting the human vessels at the edge of the Sol system. 4 major signatures consistent with the supercarriers observed in previous encounters. They're maintaining defensive positions around Earth." "Only 4?" Corvin mused. "Their entire fleet?" "Sensor scans indicate no additional major vessels in the immediate area," the operator confirmed. "However, we are detecting some unusual interference with our long-range sensors." Corvin dismissed the concern with a wave. Electronic warfare was common in military operations, and the humans had demonstrated technological sophistication. A little sensor jamming was hardly unexpected. "Open a communication channel to the human vessels," he ordered. "Let's give them an opportunity to reconsider their position before we demonstrate the consequences of challenging Council authority." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human supercarrier Terran Genesis. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared, her expression calm but alert. Behind her, Corvin could see bridge officers working at stations that seemed to incorporate technology he didn't recognize. "Admiral Corvin of the Hegemony Fleet," Chen said before he could speak, her voice carrying a note of polite acknowledgement. "You're rather far from home." "Admiral Chen," Corvin replied formally, "I am here under the authority of the Galactic Council to address your government's unauthorized withdrawal from the established accords. You have one opportunity to reconsider your position and submit to Council authority." Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested amusement. "Admiral, I appreciate your concern for galactic law and order. However, I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation somewhat significantly." "Have I?" Corvin gestured to the tactical display showing his fleet's overwhelming numerical superiority. "I see 4 vessels opposing 50. The mathematics seem quite clear." "Mathematics can be deceptive," Chen replied. "For instance, did your sensors detect the defense platforms we deployed throughout this system 3 days ago?" Corvin frowned, turning to his sensor operator. "Report. Are there additional defensive installations?" The operator worked frantically at his console for several moments before looking up with confusion. "Admiral, I'm detecting something. Multiple energy signatures that weren't there a moment ago. They're appearing throughout the system." "Appearing?" Corvin demanded. "Explain." "It's as if they're decloaking, sir, but we never detected them as cloaked. They're just becoming visible to our sensors now." On the tactical display, red markers began materializing around Corvin's fleet. Dozens of them, then hundreds surrounding his ships from every direction. Each marker represented a defensive platform with firepower equivalent to a heavy cruiser, and they had somehow remained completely invisible until this moment. "Impossible," Captain Belnash breathed. "No stealth technology is that advanced." "You're right," Chen's voice carried over the communication channel. It's not stealth technology. It's something rather more elegant. You see, Admiral, those platforms weren't hidden from your sensors. They simply weren't there until we needed them. Koraven felt a chill of understanding. Instantaneous deployment, faster than light manufacturing and deployment, Chen confirmed. One of the advantages of completely rethinking how industrial production should work, we can manufacture and position defensive installations faster than your sensors can track them. The implications were staggering. If humanity could deploy military assets instantaneously, then every tactical assumption about space warfare became obsolete. Force concentration, strategic positioning, and numerical superiority meant nothing if the enemy could simply create new weapons wherever they were needed. Admiral, his sensor operator reported urgently, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the human supercarriers. All 4 vessels are powering up weapon systems that are, Admiral, these energy readings are off our scales. Corvin watched as the Terran Genesis began to glow with contained energy. The other human supercarriers followed suit, their hulls becoming brilliant with power that seemed to violate basic physics. Whatever weapons they were charging appeared to be drawing energy from sources that shouldn't exist. Admiral Chen, he said carefully, perhaps we should discuss this situation more diplomatically. I agree, Chen replied. Unfortunately, my instructions are to provide you with a practical demonstration of why challenging humanity's sovereignty is inadvisable. Think of it as an educational opportunity. The Genesis fired first. What emerged from its primary weapon arrays wasn't the energy beams or projectiles that characterized galactic warfare. Instead, space itself seemed to twist and fold around Koraven's fleet. Reality became elastic, stretching and distorting in ways that made his sensors scream warnings about impossible gravitational anomalies. Evasive maneuvers, Corvin shouted, but his ships couldn't evade something that affected the very fabric of spacetime. The gravitational wave passed through his fleet harmlessly, but it left something changed in its wake. Suddenly, his ships were no longer moving through normal space. They were locked in place by gravitational fields that held them as securely as if they had been encased in solid matter. All vessels report loss of maneuverability, Captain Velnash announced, his voice tight with controlled panic. We're caught in some kind of gravitational anchor field. Admiral, Chen's voice continued conversationally, what you're experiencing is a practical application of gravitational manipulation technology. Your ships aren't damaged, but they're currently existing in a pocket of altered space-time that makes movement impossible. It's completely reversible, but only at our discretion. Corvin stared at the tactical display, watching his proud fleet rendered completely helpless by a single shot from the human vessel. What do you want? For now, your attention, Chen replied. You came here to test our defenses and determine whether humanity poses a genuine threat to galactic stability. I believe we've answered that question adequately. This is impossible, Velnash whispered. Gravitational manipulation on this scale should require the energy output of a star. You're right, Chen agreed, apparently having overheard. Under normal circumstances, it would. But we stopped limiting ourselves to normal circumstances several decades ago. Admiral, would you like to see what our secondary weapon systems can do? That won't be necessary, Corvin said quickly. The demonstration had already proven that humanity possessed capabilities that rendered traditional military thinking obsolete. What are your terms for our release? Simple, Chen replied. Return to the Council and deliver a message. Tell them that humanity's withdrawal from galactic civilization is non-negotiable. Tell them that any future military action against human space will be met with responses that they are not prepared to handle. And tell them that we are prepared to coexist peacefully with galactic civilization, but only as equals, not as subjects. And if the Council refuses these terms? Chen's expression hardened. Then the Council will discover that humanity has spent 3 centuries preparing for every possible escalation they might attempt. What you've seen today represents perhaps 1% of our actual capabilities. 1%? Corvin couldn't hide his disbelief. Admiral, the fleet you're facing consists of 4 ships operating in defensive mode in our home system, Chen explained patiently. We have manufacturing facilities throughout the galaxy capable of producing vessels like these at rates you would consider impossible. We have weapons that can restructure matter at the subatomic level, defenses that operate outside normal space-time, and industrial capacity that can rebuild entire fleets in a matter of hours. As if to emphasize her point, new contacts began appearing on Corvin's sensors, more human vessels, emerging from apparently empty space with the same impossible suddenness as the defense platforms. Each new arrival was larger and more advanced than the ships that had defeated his fleet so effortlessly. These vessels didn't exist an hour ago, Chen noted, watching his sensors. We manufactured them specifically for this demonstration. If you'd like, we can show you what happens when we build ships designed for offense rather than defense. No, Corvin said quickly. I believe we understand the situation. Excellent, Chen replied. In that case, we'll release your fleet and provide you with an escort out of our space. I trust your visit to the Council will be productive. The gravitational fields holding his ships began to dissipate, allowing his vessels to resume normal movement. Sleek human fighters appeared around his fleet, not to threaten, but to guide them safely out of the Sol system. The casual demonstration of control was perhaps more intimidating than any weapon could have been. As the Sovereign's wrath jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying news that would shatter the Council's understanding of galactic power balance, Corvin found himself contemplating the magnitude of their miscalculation. For 3 centuries, they had believed they were dealing with a primitive species grateful for galactic protection. Instead, they had been unwittingly nurturing the growth of a civilization that had surpassed them in every meaningful way. The humans hadn't just hidden their technological advancement. They had transcended the limitations that defined what was possible in galactic warfare. The Council would have to decide whether to accept humanity's terms for peaceful coexistence or face the consequences of challenging a species that could apparently rewrite the laws of physics at will. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. As Earth shrank behind them, Corvin realized that humanity's emergence wasn't just the end of their primitive status, it was the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization, one where the species that had once been dismissed as irrelevant. 6 months after the encounter at Sol, Chancellor Mordak stood before the completely renovated Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, preparing to address delegates representing not 47 civilizations, but 48. The newest member sat in a section that had been hastily constructed to accommodate their particular requirements, not because of unusual biology, but because they had insisted on bringing their own furniture, constructed from materials that weren't found anywhere else in the galaxy. The human delegation was small but impressive. Ambassador Elizabeth Santos sat calmly at the center of her section, flanked by technical advisors whose casual competence somehow managed to make the galaxy's most advanced scientists feel primitive. Behind them, holographic displays showed real-time data from throughout human space, a casual demonstration of communication technology that operated faster than anything the Council possessed. Honored delegates, Mordak began, his voice carrying across the chamber with the weight of 3,000 years of galactic tradition. We gather today to formally welcome humanity into the Galactic Council as a sovereign and equal member of galactic civilization. The applause was polite but nervous. In the 6 months since humanity's revelation, the entire structure of galactic politics had shifted. Trade routes had been renegotiated as human manufacturing capabilities became available to their trading partners. Military alliances had been reconsidered in light of humanity's demonstrated technological superiority. Even the basic assumptions about what was possible in science and engineering had been challenged by human innovations. Ambassador Santos, Mordak continued, would you care to address the Council regarding humanity's intentions for galactic cooperation? Elizabeth Santos rose with the easy confidence that had come to characterize human diplomacy since their emergence. She was younger than most council members expected, but there was something in her bearing that suggested she represented a civilization that thought in different timescales than the rest of the galaxy. Thank you, Chancellor Mordak, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without artificial amplification. On behalf of humanity, I want to express our appreciation for the Council's willingness to acknowledge our sovereignty and welcome us as equals in galactic civilization. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. The emphasis on equals was deliberate, a reminder that humanity's admission to the Council wasn't a favor granted by advanced civilizations but a recognition of reality. However, she continued, I believe it's important to address some misconceptions that may persist about humanity's goals and capabilities. First, humanity has no intention of challenging the existing structure of galactic civilization. We seek cooperation, not conquest. Counselor This of the Reptilian Dominion shifted nervously in her seat. With respect, Ambassador Santos, your species has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed those of any existing council member. How can we be certain that peaceful coexistence is truly your goal? Santos smiled, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. Counselor Tiss, if humanity intended conquest, this conversation would be taking place under very different circumstances. The fact that we're discussing cooperation rather than surrender terms should be evidence enough of our peaceful intentions. The blunt reminder of humanity's overwhelming military superiority sent a chill through the chamber. In the months since the Sol incident, every major power had conducted detailed analysis of human capabilities. The conclusions were uniformly disturbing. Humanity possessed the technological capacity to challenge the entire rest of the galaxy simultaneously and win. What we're offering, Santos continued, is partnership in the truest sense. Humanity possesses technologies and capabilities that could benefit all Council members. In exchange, we hope to learn from the wisdom and experience that your civilizations have accumulated over millennia. Admiral Corvin, now serving as a technical advisor to the Council, raised his hand for permission to speak. Ambassador, our analysis of human industrial capabilities suggests production rates that seem impossible according to known physics. Would you be willing to share some insight into how these achievements are possible? Santos nodded thoughtfully. Certainly, Admiral. The key breakthrough was abandoning the assumption that manufacturing must be constrained by traditional concepts of time and space. When you can manipulate matter at the quantum level and operate outside normal space-time, industrial production becomes a fundamentally different process. She gestured to one of her technical advisors who activated a holographic display showing a three-dimensional schematic that hurt to look at directly. The image seemed to fold in on itself in ways that defied geometric logic. This is a simplified representation of a quantum manufacturing matrix, the advisor explained. By operating in folded space-time, we can complete industrial processes that would normally take months in a matter of hours. The energy requirements are enormous, but manageable when you're drawing power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations. The Council delegates stared at the display with expressions ranging from awe to incomprehension. The casual reference to manipulating quantum vacuum energy, something their most advanced physicists considered theoretical impossibility, highlighted the vast gap between human capabilities and galactic understanding. Counselor Prime Binary of the Machine Consciousness processed the information with electronic efficiency. The implications for galactic economics would be revolutionary. Current trade patterns are based on scarcity models that assume limited production capacity. Precisely, Santos agreed. Humanity is prepared to share these technologies with our Council partners, beginning with basic quantum manipulation techniques and progressing to more advanced applications as understanding develops. The offer sent ripples of excitement and apprehension through the chamber. The promise of technological advancement was tempting, but the implications for existing power structures were unsettling. Civilizations that had spent millennia achieving their current status might find themselves relegated to irrelevance overnight. There are conditions, of course, Santos added, her tone remaining pleasant but acquiring an edge of steel. Any civilization that receives human technology must agree to certain principles of usage. These technologies cannot be used for aggressive expansion against Council members, and they cannot be shared with non-Council species without human approval. Councillor Velmorth of the Trade Consortium leaned forward with interest. And the economic arrangements for this technology transfer? Humanity isn't interested in traditional economic exchanges. Santos replied. "We don't need resources or manufactured goods in any meaningful quantity. What we value is knowledge, cultural exchange, and most importantly, peace." "Peace?" Thys asked suspiciously. "At what price?" Santos's expression became serious. "The price is acknowledging that the galaxy has entered a new era. For 3,000 years, galactic civilization has operated under the assumption that military power and technological advancement follow predictable patterns. Humanity's emergence proves that assumption wrong." She stood, moving to the center of the chamber where her words would carry maximum impact. "What we're offering is the opportunity to transcend the limitations that have defined galactic civilization. Instead of competing for scarce resources, we can learn to create abundance. Instead of maintaining order through military force, we can build cooperation through mutual benefit." "And if some civilizations refuse these principles?" Admiral Corvin asked quietly. Santos met his gaze directly. "Then those civilizations will discover that the old rules no longer apply. Humanity spent 3 centuries learning to hide from galactic civilization because we understood that revealing ourselves prematurely would lead to conflict. Now that we've chosen to reveal ourselves, we're committed to ensuring that the transition to the new order occurs as peacefully as possible." The threat was delivered with such calm pleasantness that it took several moments for its implications to fully register. Humanity wasn't just offering partnership, they were announcing that partnership was the only option available. The choice wasn't between cooperation and independence, it was between cooperation and obsolescence. Chancellor Mordak cleared his throat, attempting to restore some semblance of normal diplomatic procedure to the discussion. "Ambassador Santos, what specific steps is humanity proposing to facilitate this transition?" "We've prepared a comprehensive integration plan," Santos replied, returning to her seat as one of her advisors activated a new holographic display. Phase 1 involves establishing joint research facilities where human and council scientists can begin collaborative projects. Phase 2 will introduce basic quantum manufacturing techniques to interested civilizations. Phase 3 will address the broader implications of post-scarcity economics and their impact on galactic governance. The display showed a timeline that stretched across decades with branching paths for different levels of integration. What struck the council members was the assumption of inevitability. The plan wasn't designed to convince civilizations to participate, but to manage the pace of their integration into humanity's sphere of influence. "How long do we have to consider these proposals?" Mordak asked. "There's no deadline, Chancellor," Santos replied. "However, I should mention that several civilizations have already expressed interest in immediate participation. The Aquatic Federation has requested assistance with their atmospheric processing problems. The Silicon Collective has proposed joint research into quantum consciousness transfer. Even some hegemony worlds have inquired about manufacturing partnerships." The revelation that negotiations were already underway sent a shock through the chamber. Humanity hadn't just prepared for this moment. They had been conducting parallel diplomacy with individual council members, offering specific solutions to problems that had plagued those civilizations for centuries. "You've been busy," Thys observed dryly. "We've been thorough," Santos corrected. 3 centuries of observation taught us a great deal about the challenges facing different council members. We're simply offering solutions that we believe will be mutually beneficial. As the session continued, it became increasingly clear that humanity's emergence represented more than a simple addition to the Council. They had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power while simultaneously offering a path forward that promised unprecedented prosperity for those willing to accept the new reality. The galaxy would never again underestimate a species based on their apparent limitations. Humanity had proven that assumptions about primitive civilizations could be catastrophically wrong, and that the most dangerous predators were often those that had learned to hide in plain sight. As the session concluded and delegates began filing out to consult with their home governments, Ambassador Santos remained seated, calmly reviewing data streams from throughout human space. The hidden supercarrier that had announced humanity's emergence had been just the beginning. What followed would reshape not just galactic politics, but the very nature of what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization. The age of human ascendancy had begun, and the galaxy would either adapt to the new order or be left behind by a species that had spent 3 centuries learning to exceed every expectation. The choice, as humanity had made abundantly clear, belonged to each civilization individually. But the consequences of that choice would be felt throughout the galaxy for millennia to come. In the depths of space, the Terran Genesis continued its patrol around Earth, no longer hidden but serving as a permanent reminder that humanity had emerged from the shadows as the galaxy's new apex predator. The revolution was complete, but the transformation of galactic civilization was just beginning.